The only, the famous, the fabulous Lynn Fitch. Sneak it up behind us. Thanks, Lynn.
Hello.
I love this mic. Myrtle. Whew. Okay. So I was super excited. I was dressed in my Sunday best. I wasn't going to Mass. I was waiting for my grandparents to come. They were going to take me and a couple of my cousins on a special afternoon excursion. We were going to see Ivan. Ivan was a young lowland gorilla who had been taken as an infant from the Congo and brought to the United States to live with a family as a pet. He bonded with that family. He had a sibling that was human. But after 2 or 3 years, they realized that gorillas don't make very good housemates. They climb your curtains, they swing from the light fixtures, and they get big really, really fast. So they decided that Ivan was going to go and live in a glass concrete cage in a 50s style strip mall shopping center. He was going to be the exotic attraction, and it would lure shoppers in. Yeah, it wasn't a very enlightened time back then. But going to see Ivan was super popular. So we went, and there was a big line, so we waited in line. And when our turn came, I got as close to that glass as I could. I wanted to see Ivan. And what I saw just made me feel awkward. Here was this young gorilla sitting on the floor all alone, picking up pieces of straw, looked bored, trying to ignore the faces, the humans that were staring at him and pointing. And then he looked up and kind of glanced around, and he looked at me. I swear he looked at me. And for a few moments, we looked into each other's eyes. He was so sad. I just burst into tears. And I stood there crying. Why is he here? Why is he all alone? He's so unhappy. By now, people were staring and pointing at me, and some of them laughed. And my grandma, she just pulled me close and said, "Oh, Linny, don't cry. He's just an animal. He's fine. Let's go get some ice cream." But the image of Ivan and his conditions just haunted me. And I never forgot that day. And I really think it was that encounter that I had with Ivan that awakened, the empathy that I have for other beings. It made me really aware and love the planet around me. And it certainly fueled a life of environmental activism. Like the time that I was a crew member on the Greenpeace flagship Rainbow Warrior. That's another story. But years and years after that, I was reading a newspaper, and it was an article about Ivan. And there was a national campaign going on to finally remove Ivan from the cage, the glass and concrete cage, after 27 years. Some groups, some animal welfare groups had gotten together, and they were working together to have this campaign and get him freed. And they were working to raise money and raise awareness about the plight of Ivan, that this highly intelligent social animal had been completely isolated for the majority of his life. One group was actually selling paintings that Ivan had done to help fund the campaign. While Ivan was captive in this cage, one of his keepers introduced him to painting. And Ivan loved it. He turned into, a regular Picasso gorilla. He would do the most beautiful, abstract paintings, and he would sign them with his thumbprint in the corner of the canvas. I remember sitting there reading that article and crying, and remembering how I felt when I first saw Ivan. A few years after that, I was hired as a fundraiser for one of the organizations who helped to free Ivan. And I learned when I was there that the campaign had been successful, and that he was now in a sanctuary, and he was living with other gorillas, and he was able to go outside and experience things he'd never experienced before. And I was really happy for Ivan, and I was glad to be working for an organization that was connected to him. A few months passed, and it was the night of our gala event, and we were about to start this huge live auction. I was sitting in the back looking through the auction booklet, and this woman comes in the door behind me, and she looks around, and then she says, "Hey, I have something for the auction. I know I'm late, but here." And she handed me this huge painting. It's a painting that Ivan did, and I bought it years ago to help to get his freedom. And I hope you can make some money with it tonight. And I thanked her, and she walked out the door. I never even got her name. And I sat down, and I'm like, how can I do this? It's not in the booklet. There's not a description. It doesn't have a number. And the auction started, and I'm following along in the book. And when I thought we were about halfway through, there was a little break. And I picked that painting up, and I started making my way through the tables to the stage. And the room gets quiet. People are wondering, what's Lynn doing? This is not in the program. The auctioneer has a perplexed look on his face. I make my way up to the stage, and I just say, "Hey, I've got a special item, we're gonna auction it off. I'll give a quick description and then you start the bidding. And I turned around to face the ballroom, 400 plus people there. And I hold up this painting and I said, this was done by Ivan, the gorilla. And I started telling his story, what happened to him in his life, how I felt when I first met him as a child, and that now he was in a sanctuary with other gorillas, and it was great. And by now, I'm sobbing, and tears are running down my face. And I nod to the auctioneer, and he starts the bidding. And within a few minutes, he goes, sold to that couple in that table right there for $5,000. It was the most money that we made on any item that night. I walked off the stage and I was just so happy. And I was also very, very grateful to Ivan for his painting. And I went to sit down. Ivan lived for about 20 years free. He died when he was about 50 years old. I eventually moved and left that job. And when I did, they didn't give me a gold watch, but they did give me a photograph of Ivan when he was free, living in the gorilla sanctuary. And on the back of that photograph is a small picture of me on the night of the auction, crying, holding Ivan's painting. And they also gave me probably one of my most prized possessions, a small, colorful, abstract painting with pieces of straw stuck to it and a gorilla's thumbprint in the corner. I pretty much know that it was my experience with Ivan that helped me have a real kinship with other animals. It instilled a great love for Mother Earth in me. And it definitely made me realize how responsible we are for the planet. And over the years, I'd experienced some victories, mostly disappointments. It wasn't easy. But during those times, I still was optimistic and I was hopeful. But now, when I look at what's happening, at the crisis we face that seems insurmountable, the annihilation of the planet, the extinction of thousands of species, even our own existence as humans in doubt, in jeopardy, I just feel utter despair. And I'm powerless, and I do not know what to do. And that's when I think about Ivan. And I look at his photograph, and I look at his painting. And I'm reminded that when people come together and they put aside their differences and they work really hard to come up with creative solutions to the problems, anything is possible. And I don't know how it's going to work out, because to me, the odds are really bad. But I'm going to trust that humanity is going to turn this around. and I'm going to work as hard as I can to help. And by God, I'm never going to give up hope. Thanks.